All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Team Kitchen Fable. My name is Sean. I'm joined by Steven and Jacob, and we're here to make you guys better at the new set Uprising. To do that, we're going to cover specific card rulings and interactions that we think every player should know going into the Road to National season, and we'll provide context for both Classic Constructed and the limited formats. But before we do that, if you're not already, please subscribe and like this video. It's really going to help us out. And we've got tons of great things on our Patreon and Twitter, which will be in the description. So make sure you check those out as well if you're interested in supporting the team.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that. We're going to just go ahead and hop in. So some of these will be quick fire. Some of them are going to be definitely some more interesting discussions. And we'll have chapters down below if you want to skip around and look at specific cards that interest you. The first one we're going to talk about is a couple new mechanics. The first one is Ward. So things to know about Ward are that, for one, it is not optional. So if your opponent can come in with like a 1 damage attack before their 4 damage attack, it will blow up your ward and kind of be useless to you. So you want to keep that in mind when playing it. And then it also cannot like float over damage. So the entire ward protection will blow up on one single instance. It can't float around, kind of like Bonehead Barrier does.
Yep, and you want to be really careful with that. And you can also block attacks that you think are not worth it to use your ward on. For example, when, like you said, 1 damage attack comes through, you can block it normally with a card from your hand, and you'll still have the ward protection floating for when you actually want it to quote unquote pop.
Yeah, I think my recommendation here would be to time this with a relevant Islander on hit, like an Arcane on hit that's going to cause unwanted frostbites or maybe extra damage if somehow they in limited, because I see this as a limited card, specifically sand cover. But if they have somehow frost hex on that turn, then you can prevent those you can prevent the waning moon and the frostbites off like a sigil of
permafrost.
Permafrost, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and now we are moving over to Quell. Quell is very interesting mechanic, especially in limited. If you use it well, if you are the best Quell user versus your opponent, I think you're going to be winning that match. So Quell specifically is kind of like Arcane Barrier in the sense that you have to wait for the damage event to start happening, and then you can start pitching into Quell. And then that section is very important, damage event. I know that this is not a limited card, but for Rosetta Thorn, it will deal an event of 2 arcane damage, and then it'll deal an event of 2 physical damage. You can quell 1 of the arcane damage, and then quell 1 from the physical damage if you were to take both separate events of the damage.
Yeah, I totally agree. And before, I'm going to get into Breaking Point here in a second and Rupture, but I think that Quell is often a better pick than some of the offensive equipment in Uprising Limited. Like sometimes Quell, you can just outplay your opponent more than the sash of Sandakai and
Agreed.
all of that. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to Rupture. Rupture is a new mechanic, but we're all familiar with it if you've been playing Ninjas of the past. Flying Kick specifically. Flying Kick, 3rd chain link or higher, gains +2. Rupture is a Draconic keyword, and it is independent of the Draconic keyword beyond that, right? So any 4 chain links, as long as I have a combat chain of 4 chain links, including Breaking Point, then Breaking Point will destroy the opponent's arsenal on hit. There are other cards like this, like Searing Touch, etc., but it's a very straightforward keyword, so I think I don't really have much to add here. Yeah, so Searing Emberblade. Oh yeah, Jacob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I also want Searing Emberblade and Phoenix Flame are kind of fit into that chain link Draconic aspect. And so Searing Emberblade reads itself. It costs 2, and it says if you control 2 or more Draconic chain links, it has Go Again. That includes itself. And the same is true of Phoenix Flame. So Phoenix Flame is the 2nd Draconic chain link. It does get its +1. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we covered all those
yes.
Draconic cards together.
Cards do count themselves. That is very important.
Yeah, so the last keyword from the set is freeze. There's a couple ice cards that have freeze on them, specifically Encase and Icebind. The first thing to talk about with freeze is that if you freeze a hero, in the case of Incase, the things that will be is specifically how freeze works is the card can't be played or activated. So obviously you can't play your hero, but you can activate your hero. For example, if you're playing Oldhim and you want to activate his defense reaction, you cannot do that if your card is frozen. But it does not prevent triggered effects. So, for example, Katsu, if a card hits, Katsu will still trigger, and you do get the option to discard to search for a combo card. So that's a thing to keep in mind. It also works like that on equipments. So things like Mask of Momentum are a trigger. It will still happen if your Mask of Momentum is frozen. But if like your Goliath Gauntlet gets frozen, you cannot activate it to give your next attack +2 power. So the next thing is Icebind with freeze. If the card in your arsenal is frozen, of course you cannot play it. But the more interesting thing to talk about with Icebind is stacking triggers. So basically what happens is Conduit of Frostburn goes, and then we play Icebind. That text from Conduit of Frostburn still gets applied to Icebind, but it's two events that happen both at the same time. They go on the stack when you play the Icebind, but as the controller of those effects, you get to order which one happens first. So you can make the Icebind's damage happen first. So if the opponent takes the damage, or if they just have less than 3 arcane barrier and can't block it, you can freeze their arsenal, and then the Conduit of Frostbind thing will happen. When this deals arcane damage to a hero, destroy a frozen card in their arsenal. So these two combo nicely. Long-winded way of saying freeze is pretty strong, and you can straight up destroy arsenal cards if the opponent can't block your arcane barrier.
Yeah, we have CNC at home.
Yeah, this is 2-card combo, including an equipment for CNC at home.
Yeah. Okay, so that moves into me talking about Afflictions. Affliction is a new card subtype. Here's one of them. It's called Frost Hex. It has a very strong effect, but what we're going to talk about is how Afflictions interact on the board. So technically, when you're playing an Affliction, you're actually placing the card on your opponent's side of the field, and they are afflicted by this effect. So when it says, reading Frost Hex here says Frostbites you control have at the beginning of your end phase, this deals 1 arcane damage to you. So that text is applied to the opponent. So if they have a Frostbite, they're talking about the opponent gaining and receiving that damage, not you. So that's why it's worded in that way, because you're giving the affliction to the opponent.
And even though you control it, if you somehow destroy this affliction, it still goes back to your opponent's graveyard, right?
Correct. I'm the Icelander player with a Frost Hex, and they use a card to get rid of it. It goes to my graveyard. Yeah.
Awesome.
So the big new card type in Uprising are the dragons, right? The invocable dragons. These invoke type dragons, basically, you're summoning a dragon, right? So you have an action card that in essence summons a dragon for a cost of resources. So Optimi costs 6, and it also requires that you need an Ash. And Ash are generated 2 ways. 1 through Draconic and Draconic Illusionist cards, and 2 through Dromai's ability, which says whenever you pitch a red, generate an Ash. Something that is very important to know about invoking dragons is that they require you target an Ash, meaning that when you're going to play the card, the reds that you pitch for Optimi will generate Ash, but the Ash that you generate cannot be targeted by Optimi. So you need the prerequisite of having a single Ash ready when you're going to play Dracona Optimi or any other individual dragon. The exception to this, and we don't have it on our slide here, but Rake the Embers, for instance, when you're creating Ash Wings, when it says turn any Ash, oh, we do have it. All right, great. Transform up to 3 Ash you control into Aether Ash Wings. This card does not require a target. And so at the time of this resolving, it'll have both the Ash token that you created from the card text, and if you pitch a red for it, you'll have the Ash ready from Dromai's ability. So I want to make that distinction about summoning dragons, and I think you definitely want to look out for that if you plan on using some of the larger dragons.
Yeah, for sure. And so right after talking about dragons, I want to talk about the interaction between on-hit effects and dragons. And for anyone that was around in Monarch meta, we saw this already with the other allies that Chain and Levia can summon. I mean, obviously, the recent meta that still happened because Chain has always been very strong. If you were playing against him with like a fatigue style deck and he summons Urser, but it works the same exact way with dragons. If you have a card with an on hit effect and that card hits the dragon, which it will because they cannot defend it, you will still get that on hit effect. So you need to read the text of the on hit just to make sure. But for example, with Rising Resentment, if it hits, you may banish an attack action card from your hand with cost less than the number of Draconic Chain Links you control. If you do, it costs 1 less to play. So you can resolve that, and you will be able to banish a card and play it for 1 less. If you hit a dragon, the things to look out for if you're trying to do this is if your card says if this hits a hero, then it does not work if it hits a dragon. The other one is if the card affects the defending hero, it does not affect your opponent if it hits a dragon. So the other big one with this is Herald of Judgment. It says if this hits, the defending hero may not play cards from their banished zone. So if for some reason Dromai would have been able to play a card from her banished zone, she still could if you hit her dragon with it. So these are some of the nuances with hitting allies. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about with that. Just kind of keep in mind the exact wording of the cards and keep in mind when it's saying hero or ally or just hitting.
Very true. And now we're going to talk about Phoenix Flame and just the combat chain shenanigans that you can do. I think Sean had more input I wanted to say about here.
Yeah, I what I wanted to say here was I want to remind everyone that you can use the same Phoenix Flame multiple times in a turn. It doesn't. I'm not saying you can use Phi's ability more than once in a turn. That's not true. What I am saying though is, especially in the limited environment, manipulating your combat chain to play Phoenix Flames multiple times or get effects off of them multiple times is really huge. I had an 18 damage turn that was looking very grim off of 2 resources, simply because I had a Stoke the Flames and a Burn Away, or Burn Away, whatever that one is, or you banish. And what happened was I was able to get to Phi's ability, trigger Phi's ability, play the Phoenix Flame, deliberately close the combat chain. So if you don't know, you can just say I am closing the combat chain and send all attack actions on this chain to the graveyard. So you can do that, send Phoenix Flame to the graveyard, and then play something like Stoke the Flames or Inflame, but Inflame needs a prerequisite to get there, another red card. Stoke the Flame says if it hits, it gains Go Again and grab a Phoenix Flame. So if that hits, you can then play the Phoenix Flame again. I was able to play a Burn Away from Art. After that, I closed the combat chain. So I hit the Burn Away, then played Phoenix Flame, closed the combat chain, and then played a Burn Away to be able to make utility out of that Phoenix Flame again. So effectively, I had 3 Phoenix Flame effects on the same turn. And I just want to make sure that you guys remember that. You do not need multiple Phoenix Flames in graveyard to make use of of Phoenix Flame multiple times in a turn.
Yeah, so Heat Wave is just a logical continuation to the chain link shenanigans. If you can somehow play a Phoenix Flame and then close the chain and get it back, they're just going to keep getting +1s. So that's just kind of an extra little cookie crumb to add on to the chain link closing shenanigans.
So Tomeltai, I just want to make the note on dragons. So we talked about invoking, but this is specifically about when dragons attack, and this is why dragons are so powerful, especially the majestic one-ofs. So Tomeltai, Optimi, and whatever the third one is, I forget what it's called. So Tomeltai is really strong because if you can invoke it and you attack with it, even if they pop it with a Phantasm Breaker, you still have the effect of whenever Tomeltai attacks hero, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. If they're reds, you can influence your opponent's armor and potentially even destroy a critical piece of armor like Crown of Seeds or Rampart. So if you're able to get as far as invoking it, then your opponent has no interaction with your ability to destroy their armor. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, is the attack does not need to land or even resolve successfully. You just need to target the attack and the ability is red.
Yeah, so
Very true.
if you've got dragons with such a strong effect and it goes off regardless of Phantasm, that's super beneficial to know when you're running Dromai. So the last couple of cards are just some one-off cards that have some kind of interesting things that you can do with them. The first one is Oasis Respite. So if you read the card, the last sentence says if they have less life, they may gain one. In card games, may is like a huge keyword to keep track of on your cards. If it's may, it is optional, so you can choose not to do it. Almost always, it's going to be beneficial to gain one life, but there are multiple scenarios where you actually may not want to gain a life. So, for example, if your opponent is coming in with a 6 power attack and you're blocking with Skullcap, and then you throw an Oasis Respite at it, and you have one less life than your opponent. If you gain that life, that will happen before damage calculation, and that will turn your Skullcap off, and therefore that 6 power attack will hit you, which is especially bad if it's something like a Command and Conquer. So the other place where this is useful is if your opponent, or is if you are coming in with a like Scar for a Scar, and your opponent is Icelander and they're coming at you with 4 damage, and you're exactly 1 less life than them. You can prevent the 4 damage with Oasis Respite and not gain the life, so that your Scar for a Scar maintains go again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
It's
You can play a blue one.
it's a
That was
weird-
convoluted. I wouldn't have gone that far with the description. I would just say something as simple as I'm being attacked by my opponent. I have an Oasis Respite and a Scar for a Scar that I want to have go again on my turn. And I'm at 6 life and my opponent's at 7. And so I'm going to choose not to gain the life so the Scar for a Scar gets go again. But yes, in the Islander scenario, we're basically saying the same thing, but I think just be very simple. Life low, and it's good because you have Scar for a Scar. Don't heal.
Maintain life low,
Yeah,
for sure.
Maintain life low for your special effects for sure.
Yeah, this is my favorite card. It's just in Uprising, besides Double Strike, but Double Strike is just, ninja card, whatever. But Thaw is super cool because this is, if I recall correctly, this is the first recursive card from Graveyard that doesn't cost anything to use the recursion ability other than a certain turn phase being entered. So, and this is a constant threat for the Islander matchup, and it helps with the Oldhim matchup. It doesn't hurt, right? Oldhim can't give you it can give you hypothermia, same thing with Lexi, but typically those aren't like the worst things in the world. It just says gain go again, right? But more than often than not, it's just a consistent card against ice that says, you know what? I'm going to hold this Thaw in Graveyard until that one Frostbite is backbreaking. Or against Islander, it says you cannot stack multiple Frost Hexes against me because I'm going to be swinging these Thaws and using them when I can. So I really like this card. I think it's super cool. It sets a great precedent to have this ability that can be just triggered from Graveyard when, for no cost other than the phase of the game. So Shuko, I pulled this in my limited pool and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it was ace because the +1 and the non-preventable. But Shuko is great for 2 reasons. One is I think it's a great sideboard card into Prism, but that's not even what I'm here to talk about. It basically says you can't erudition me when I'm Katsu for free, right? I don't need to have a D-React ready. I can just say, all right, fine, I can prevent the erudition. But specifically, this card is a nice threat for heroes like Oldhim and Prism. And so for Oldhim, it says my second base 2 or less attack gains +1 and damage can't be prevented, meaning that they can't earth react it, which is very, very great, especially if for some reason you're on Katsu and looking to get a mass trigger and you layer a Razor on top of it, and for some reason they can only prevent damage with the earth react, so you can break through Oldhim. The other interaction is specifically with Spectral Shields, because Spectral Shields are preventative to damage. So it has nothing to do with, it's like kind of in that damage calc of like, all right, I'm going to be dealt damage, so now Spectral Shield swoops in and prevents the hit. And so what that means is the damage isn't prevented, so there's a constant check of, let's say Prism has 10 Spectral Shields, which we know she can go nuts. We don't, I'm not going to go on my Prism hate train right now. I'm just going to allude to the Prism hate train. So Prism has 10 Spectral Shields, and you come in with your second Phoenix Flame for 2. It's it can't be prevented, and somehow Prism doesn't have any cards to block with. What's going to happen is Phoenix Flame is going to present 2 damage, and Spectral Shield's going to say, oh man, I want to prevent this. I'm going to destroy myself and prevent the damage. But no math is going to be done. It's going to be 2-0, and a Spectral Shield breaks. So then it's going to check the next Spectral Shield and do the same thing 10 times over. So it in the right scenario, it does have the potential to break multiple Spectral Shields. Now, how often that's going to actually come into play? Not super often, but it's an important thing to understand because the inches. Flesh and Blood is a game that is won in inches, and knowing this in just the 1 out of 30 games against Prism that this will come up, it can get you the win. So, really wanted to point this aspect out.
Yeah,
Perfect.
So we also talked about this in our last release notes video with Everfest. We talked about the Storming Gloom Veil. If it hits, the arcane damage cannot be prevented. That was truly a rare scenario. Like, any Prism opponent is not going to create Spectral Shields after they get hit with a Storming Gloom Veil. But with Tiger Stripe Shuko, with Ninja and Prism shaping up to look pretty strong, this is definitely going to be one you want to remember and you want to play around it. Whether you're on the Ninja side and you want to present difficult blocking decisions for your Prism opponent, maybe you save your 2-powered base damage card for the end of the chain, or you're on the Prism side and you realize that you need to protect your Spectral Shields as a win con for some reason, you need to save a card to block their base 2 power card, in case you need your Spectral Shields to not get destroyed. So definitely keep this one in mind. It's going to come up, in my opinion, more often than that Storming Gloom Veil interaction for sure.
Yep, and it's the same way with the limited format. Ward is also a prevent effect that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, so if you have an Ash that's warded with Sand Cover, that's just going to get destroyed and not prevent the damage from a Shuko attack. Yeah, so the next
Erase
one we
face.
have is, Erase Face. I think everyone has examples to bring up with this card. Basically, with Erase Face, when it hits a hero, cards and tokens they own lose all class and talent types until the end of their next turn. So there's just so many things that this does. The rule is just going to be like, read your cards for this, but some examples are you cannot channel cards with like Channel Mount Heroic and Channel Lake Frigid, for example, because the cards in your pitch zone do not have the Earth talent type. Another example is when cards are discarded as brute effects, they do not count as brute cards, so you can't intimidate your opponent if you are hit by Erase Face. So these are 2 examples. Steven and Sean, do you guys have any other examples you want to add on this one?
Yeah, I want to just make sure that we get a glimpse from the release notes straight up about all the cards that this affects. So cards affected by Erase Face are in the arena, in hand, in arsenal, in the deck, in the pitch zone, in the banish zone, in the graveyard, and even cards outside the game. And so that's it. It just hits everything. But there's a very small caveat that it might come up during gameplay, is that Erase Face does not prevent a card from gaining the class or talent type. So, for example, Brand with Cinderclaw, which is a very common card that gets used in the Draconic Ninja deck, can actually give the Draconic subtype to the next attack. Even though they have already lost it, they still can gain it.
Does it affect your Searing Emberblade? So, like, let's say I play Brand with Cinderclaw into Snatch, and then I Snapdragon, and then I say, okay, I want to play Searing Emberblade. I assume because this is a card on the board, it does not have Draconic.
It does not.
So
you're correct.
I love the idea of all cards outside of the game. Like, what does that even mean? Like,
Not sure why
is my binder just like is my binder just a bunch of generics now? I don't understand.
No, they're nothing. They're not even generic.
Yeah, so you better make sure that you don't get hit with Erase Face before you pull out the trade binder.
All your cold foils are worthless. If you get hit by a single Erase Face, like, your collection is dead.
Yeah, those are non-foils now, sorry.
Okay, actual interactions, fusion, in general, for the decks that do fusion, they
Oh, yeah.
don't count towards
Yep.
that. I don't know.
Prism, it turns off Luminaris as well because it says illusionist attacks get go again while there's a yellow card in your pitch zone. So your auras no longer have illusionist on
Yep.
them. Your heralds no longer say light illusionist. So this card, it is honestly against many decks in the format right now. It is more of a time walk than CNC because it tells Oldhim no Oakenold Fuse, says no Channel Lake Frigid. It says a lot of things to a lot of heroes that are relevant in the new age of talents. So if you're a fab boomer, rest easy. This is the new Command and Conquer. We're back. Everything's okay. You can cancel out talents now.
And it's a 2-block, a little bit more balanced.
Yeah.
Clearly, they thought it was stronger than Command and Conquer because it blocks 1 less, so they know what they're doing.
So true.
Yeah, so the last one we added on here is Hypothermia, and I wanted to talk about the idea of gaining go again. So Hypothermia means attacks. First of all, it's an affliction, so you is your opponent in this case. If you play this under your opponent's control, attacks they control cannot gain go again. So basically, in Flesh and Blood, the instance of going from not having go again to having go again means you gained it. So some of the older cards I don't think are always formatted with the keyword gain. I don't have an example on me.
So they've kind of errated the whole thing. We're saying effects like gain, have, has, etc. They're just kind of synonymous with the gaining kind of aspect of the game. So if a card would gain it in a if it's not literally printed on the card at the bottom that says go again, then it just Hypothermia, it will turn it off.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about that. Iris of Reality says that the attack was per turn action 3 attack go again. I believe I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that this works okay. Did you get?
Yeah, because there's a period after attack. So what that means is there's like a blank space. They just didn't have enough space, and the weapon, the illusionist 4 damage weapon, has go again printed on the card, and so it never gained go again. It just exists with it.
But can we also talk about Luminaris, which says while there's a card with a yellow in your pitch zone, attacks you control have go again. It says have, but that is an event of going from not having go again to having go again.
Yep. So like I said, it's anonymous, so it will work as you want it. So they will not be gaining or having that go again.
Yeah, this is great for Lexi, I think, because Prism was a decently difficult matchup. So to be able to say, yeah, you can't play the face roll or Herald build and Erudition, Phantasmaclasm, Fractal me this turn, I think that's great. I love to see that.
Yeah, it also works retroactively. So if you are Icelander, and then let's say the opponent has less life than you, and they go with Scar for a Scar, and that happens on play, and you wait till like the defense reaction step, you can actually play Hypothermia, and the Scar for a Scar will actually lose the go again because it will retroactively remove it.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching. This is basically a snapshot of what we thought were interesting rules from the Uprising release notes. As always, this is not like the end all be all. So if you're ever at an event and you have a question about a ruling, contact your judge. You should never tell them to watch our video and that this is an official ruling.
What do you?
I would love them to tell you.
Steven's a level 1 judge, and he's like an honorary level 6 judge. Dude knows the ruling as well as he knows the ruling for the new set before the new set starts to get spoiled. That's how good Steven is.
That's how you win. That's how you win games, I think, especially in world premieres.
Yeah. Knowing rules is of course important for winning games, but just
it's even more important for winning games. Hitting the subscribe and like button below the video, and you know what? There, you see the Handshake Brothers here. I forget what the card is called. I just always call it Handshake Brothers. If you want to be like them, like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys watching, and don't fight with your level 1 judge over what we say in our videos, but definitely give them some good tips for some great content.
Tell them about our videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we'll leave a link for the Uprising release notes as well in the description. If you're interested, you can also go back and watch the release notes video for Everfest that we posted when Everfest came out. We'll keep doing it for the next sets, but yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.